Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Madi Weiss, and she is a field application engineer at Boston Dynamics. And Boston Dynamics always doing some exciting things in the robotics space and in the warehouse space too as well. So we're going to dive a little bit in, and we haven't had Boston Dynamics on for quite a while. So we're going to get some of the latest updates, specifically around stretch and spot. And if you're not familiar with those, we're going to talk about what those are too as well. And Maddie's going to tell us a little bit about that and also kind of what she's seeing in the robotic space in general when it comes to logistics and warehousing. So Maddie, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, Kevin, doing well, and great to meet you.
Good to meet you too. Happy to get you on here. Happy to talk about this today. So let's kick it off. If people are not familiar with Boston Dynamics and haven't seen all the exciting videos that you guys put out from time to time, tell us a little bit about Boston Dynamics and what you all do.
Yeah, of course. I feel like if you've been on the internet in the past 15 years, you've probably seen a video from Boston Dynamics at this point. When I explain to people who maybe haven't heard of what Boston Dynamics is, I usually say, have you seen a little yellow robotic dog running around online? And typically the answer is yes, and then we go from there. So if you've ever seen a little yellow robotic dog running around, that is Boston Dynamics.
Mm,
Um, we spun out of MIT and we really were founded in 1992, but we really went public in 2020. So actually going from a research lab to a real company has been such a change for Boston Dynamics of producing these fun YouTube videos and doing a lot of research into now these real industrial inspection use cases for Spot, and then also Stretch becoming a real workhorse in the logistics space for moving boxes, and then also Atlas, which everyone loves to talk about the future use cases
yeah.
of Atlas. Um, Overall, though, we're really excited to talk about all of them. I can break down a little bit of what each robot does and how we see each robot breaking in and fitting into the logistics space. If we would like to start with that.
Sure. Yeah. Tell us about those because I think we see, like you said, the videos of all these interesting things that they're doing and walking around, and Spot is just it's kind of cute, right, as a dog, right? But what are like some of the practical applications, and tell us about kind of these robots and how they're fitting in, specifically into the logistics space.
Yeah, of course. So I've actually had the pleasure of working with both Spot and Stretch. I have not yet worked on Atlas. Atlas is still rather new. We
Mm,
are hoping to demo Atlas later this year at some customer sites, including at Hyundai. Um, but with Spot in particularly, really good for industrial inspection use cases, which that's a very broad range to talk about here.
yeah.
But with Spot and all the payloads that we can integrate onto it, we can do visual and thermal imaging, acoustic inspections, remote investigations, a number of things that are really helpful to maintenance teams, whether it be in logistics, oil and gas, or any industry really. Being able to prepare ahead of time for when your motors are going to fail is so valuable. So you can prevent this critical downtime and keep your operations running.
Mm,
We have some really cool success stories from a lot of industrial customers in again, oil and gas, manufacturing, logistics, including Chevron, Anheuser-Busch, Nestle Purina, and then even actual logistics companies like Otto. We have
okay.
some amazing use cases at all of these. And with Spot really being a platform that you integrate onto, the use cases are very vast and broad. Something I want to touch on is from one of our customers, Otto. We've seen really great success there of doing visual inspections for
Mm,
the safety team, which is something that's a little bit different than what we've seen in a lot of our other industrial inspection environments. So checking for fire extinguishers, if doors are open, checking if there's puddles on the ground, like oil buildup. Those are all super useful and
interesting.
something that a typical sensor isn't able to actually gather that information and make decisions on it. With our new AI visual inspections, we're able to take the pictures that Spot gathers and actually run true questions and an AI model on those pictures. So in the past, while Spot was just gathering pictures from around the facility, now we're able to prompt and answer questions about what's happening within the facility.
Mm, interesting. So Spot is kind of going around and checking these things, like you said, maybe fire extinguishers or something like that, or puddles, and then And then that's being fed back to the user. Maybe in this case, it's like a safety director or something, and then they're able to dig deeper into that. Like, what does that? I guess what does that workflow kind of look like?
Sure. So part of what our team does is we help customers integrate Spot onto your site. So we tell Spot ahead of time what to be looking out for while it's walking around. And in Orbit, which is our fleet manager and alert management system for Spot,
Mm,
we can ask, hey, when this picture comes in, I'm going to ask a question based on that picture automatically, and if it has a certain value, alert the user. So, for example, if we expect there to be a fire extinguisher somewhere and Spot takes a picture and there's no fire extinguisher, it will alert immediately on orbit and let them know that something is wrong and they need to have someone either go check it or bring a fire extinguisher and replace what should be there.
mm,
And this is just a very basic example. We've done so many different AI VI use cases here. But AI VI is one of our newest features in 5.0, the newest release that came out about a month ago. So we're finding more and more use cases as the days come up from different customers everywhere.
mm. Interesting. Yeah, yeah, and I love that use case because that is something that's like, I mean, it's time consuming, right? Especially if you have a large facility to go and check fire extinguishers, and it's something that sometimes maybe you forget to do in some scenarios, and if you're able to just put like Spot on the, I guess, the schedule, right, to do that, and it's just going to happen kind of automatically, which I think is really really smart to do that. So tell us a little bit about Stretch as well.
Sure, of course. Yeah, so while Spot is really a platform that has so many purposes, Stretch is super purpose built, purpose driven. So Stretch is released in 2022 and has been rolling out ever since then. And
Mm,
at all of the customer sites that I've seen, Stretch has made such an immediate impact for the people who are actually working in these really tough environments. For those who are unaware, Stretch is our truck unloading robot. It doesn't just do that, it can do a lot more. But for right now, the main use case that we're tackling is true truck unloading with Stretch.
mm-hmm,
So Stretch is really broken up into three components. We have a base, we have a giant arm, and then we have a perception system. And it's just really good at picking up boxes and putting them down repeatedly over and over all day long.
yeah,
Uh,
and it's focused on, when you say trailer unloading, it's doing like floor loaded containers,
yes,
basically, no pallet, no pallets.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've seen there's a lot of solutions out in the industry that were focused on pallet unloading,
Mm-hmm,
but nothing really was able to tackle floor unloading. So Stretch being really mobile and agile is amazing at unloading these floor loaded containers.
mm,
And we've
interesting.
tested in industries everywhere from clothing and apparel to home appliances. It's really broad what comes in these boxes and comes off of these containers and trailers that who knows even where they're coming from. You open up a container, maybe the last time it was opened was 3 months ago in India.
Yeah.
Uh, it's always amazing when you open them up and see what Stretch is unloading today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting to see that, as you said, because we don't think about these things that are just around us on our desk right now or something, and how far they've actually traveled to get to us or where they've been. But Stretch certainly is very interesting, and I think it was one of, if not the first real use case that came out, or application that came out to try and solve this problem of container unloading. And you've had a good relationship with DHL for some time, and I saw recently they committed to getting, I think, 1,000 units, right, of Stretch. So tell us a little bit about how has that evolved, and how has that kind of proven out the solution as something that is reliable and that you can utilize on a daily basis for unloading these containers.
Yeah, of course. I mean, even though Stretch has only been in the world for about 3 years, we've seen such a dramatic improvement in just those 3 years. And with specifically DHL
Mm,
being one of our primary and early adopters, they've even seen such a huge improvement of the first iterations of Stretch and now.
mm,
Our software team is amazing at integrating new customer feature requests and just really custom solutions that maybe a different customer doesn't care about. So we have a lot of really unique solutions with Stretch, even though it is just a single platform. So something like label placement has been a big question that we've been talking about of can Stretch place a label a certain direction so that downstream it can be induced into the warehouse properly.
Mm.
Um, Even different conveyors that Stretch is working with. Stretch is able to work with, at this time, both telescopic and accordion conveyors. We've been seeing a lot more telescopic conveyors in the field just because they're a lot more reliable and have a longer longevity.
Hmm.
So we really want to make sure that Stretch is working with a system that will not break.
Yeah.
Um, but overall, all of these custom solutions that Stretch is able to unload onto and how easy it is to actually integrate it into your warehouse has been probably the biggest change within the past 3 years. We could probably start talking to a new customer and have Stretch on their site in a few months,
Oh,
unloading
really?
boxes.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting to see that. And I think, that application, and I've talked about this on the podcast multiple times. I mean, I think that's one of the hardest jobs, like in the warehouse, is unloading those containers or loading them, and especially when they're floor loaded, because it's all really manual labor if you're not using some other type of solution. So I think it's great that you've developed that solution to be able to tackle that. And so, talk to us a little bit about what does, because certainly I've seen Stretch grabbing boxes, right, and unloading them. But tell us about what does, like, kind of the dock process look like. So Stretch grabs a box, and then Stretch is putting it on some type of conveyor, it sounds like, and then what happens?
Yeah, so overall, the process of actually using Stretch is very, very easy.
Mm-hmm.
The entire process of helping Stretch get to its job and then helping it finish up is something we can train in a day or two. Our team, when we're actually on site, typically the field application engineers are on site for maybe 2.5 weeks, and we're looking to reduce that time
Mm-hmm.
every as we get more product improvements and make Stretch easier to use. The the training that we do really just hones in on how to be safe around Stretch. Stretch is not currently a cobot, so it really needs to
Mm.
be in its own work cell and away from people while it's moving. Um, so a lot of the training that we do is just how to safely operate Stretch, of how to use our pendant, which is our controller we use to drive Stretch into the work cell, to how to actually have Stretch start its job. And Kevin, I'm telling you, if you haven't had the chance to use Stretch yet, it's really be up and running and using Stretch on your own in one day.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, I'm waiting for my invite to, come and try it. So,
of course, we'll
yeah.
reach out to the team and see if we can get you out here.
So I mean, it's very interesting. So it's not a cobot. So it still needs to be. That means it still needs to be in kind of like a caged area. There
Yeah,
needs to
so
be some safety barrier.
it still needs to be removed from human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
We can interact with it on our console, which is a tablet that we use to talk with Stretch and send commands. But overall, when Stretch is running, we stay away from it.
Mm.
Um, And with our different conveyor types, we have a couple different safety solutions. For telescopic, we use a virtual guard where there are LiDARs around so that if someone does approach Stretch, it will stop working if someone gets too close.
Interesting. Gotcha. And so how does because I imagine from time to time there's some exceptions, right? Maybe like a box falls and Stretch can't get to it, or maybe there's not. I don't know. But how does that work, and what does that look like from like trying to manage and alleviate those exceptions?
Yeah. Um, Stretch is really, really good at actually recovering drop boxes.
Okay.
So if a box does fall out of the facade, it will grab it, unless it's in a position where it can't. So if it's under the conveyor or if it's
Mm.
pinned against its base. So if Stretch is having problems, a user who is working around the robot can just turn a key, just like a car. They can turn the key, and Stretch will put itself back into a safe position, and then you're able to
Mm.
enter the work cell and remove any obstacles or debris from around Stretch. And overall, it's really easy to intervene when Stretch needs help, which is not super frequently. Our Dropbox recovery improved a ton in one of our releases early last year, I believe.
Mm.
And Stretches, you really can set it and forget it. Back when we first started working with Stretch, people wanted to watch it all the time,
Yeah.
and it's really cool. It's a really
Yeah.
cool robot doing a really awful job.
Yeah.
And it, once you see Stretch running for maybe a couple of days, maybe a week, you're like, oh, okay, it's going to just do the thing that it's supposed to do really well.
Mm.
It becomes almost more of a piece of industrial equipment than a robot. When people look at Spot and Atlas, they really do see like that's a robot because they can personify it. When people see
Mm,
stretch, it's more of a piece of true industrial equipment that is just integrated into your warehouse.
mm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and I can imagine. I mean, because obviously, like you're saving on labor there, right? And which I think is a great place to kind of replace labor because the turnover at the dock is super high, in my experience. And but I think it's also interesting, like you said, like people just want to watch it, right? So like it's it's a little bit of like a productivity slowdown there, and it maybe in the first initial week or so as people want to see like what's going on. But tell us a little bit because you mentioned there that Stretch's primary focus now is on the container unloading, but there's also maybe some potential applications beyond the dock that a Stretch might be working on or getting to. So tell us a little bit about maybe some of those possibilities.
Yeah, so Stretch was really intentionally designed as a mobile multi-use platform. If Stretch was just going to be used for container unload, it would probably look a little bit different than it does right now.
Hmm.
But Stretch really can go anywhere within a warehouse. Its base is about the size of a pallet, so anywhere that a pallet can go, Stretch can also ideally fit there. We're working on a number of other use cases right now, and I'm sure you'll see some news from our company eventually of where we see Stretch working on next. I know at Modex and ProMat we did showcase a pallet unload and sort of case picking use case, but we'll see when we roll out some more information and news on those in the future. So keep an eye out for that.
Okay, okay. A little teaser there. So we'll be looking forward to that definitely to see how it evolves. And I think too. I mean, just looking at the form factor of Stretch itself. I mean, I can see that there are like definitely potential there are use cases within the warehouse. So very interested to see that in the future here. But it's really interesting to see this. And obviously, as you mentioned, Boston Dynamics has been around since 1992, right? Has been kind of as a company out there since 2020, I think you said, right? So, but obviously very involved in the robotic space and all this research and putting things out there and testing different use cases. So, I'm curious, like, how have you seen some of the human interactions kind of evolve as more robots are deployed out there, right? Because I imagine that, over the years, like people have become maybe more used to it or, maybe more comfortable around it than initially when it was kind of earlier on as you started to roll out. But I'm curious, like what have you seen and how do humans interact? I mean, you mentioned that people love to watch Stretch, but like, what does that look like when it's actually going live in a facility, and how does the human dynamic look like with these robots?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends everywhere on how much people have been socialized. It's a term we like to use a lot, is robot
Mm,
socialization, of actually introducing people to the robots ahead of time or easing them in so that it's not like, wow, there's a robot in my workspace now. What's going on?
mm,
Um, a story I love to share for Spot is typically Spot will arrive on site ahead of our team. So it
okay.
gives the people on site, we call it the robot wranglers, a
Mm,
chance to actually go socialize Spot with their teams. And we've really seen some people go from this, oh, I don't want anything to do with the robot, like I'm too confused by it, to being so involved with it and asking these questions that are so high level, like robotics engineer level questions, within the span of a few weeks.
mm,
Um, so it's been a really awesome experience to see robotics in the real world and kind of disprove a lot of those myths that people are afraid of robots.
mm,
Because once people actually start working with them, they realize they're just a tool that's going to help them do their job better. Uh, another story I love to share is my very first stretch deployment that I ever worked on. There was a lady who was working in the trailer and container unload. It was actually a 3PL, so it was doing a lot of cross docking.
okay.
And she had been working there for over 30 years. And she didn't really like doing forklifts because she didn't like driving.
Mm,
So she really just stuck with trailer unload. And she was one of the first people they trained on stretch. It was sort of a rite of passage for her to actually be one of the first ones to use this new tool that was going to augment her job so much. And she went from being someone who didn't have a smartphone to
oh wow.
now is running an entire robot to unload trailers. And I think something like that is so cool of just seeing how much these robots actually can augment someone's day-to-day tasks and really make them confident in their own technological abilities.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and that's like a great story too. And I mean, huge jump in technology for her,
Yeah,
right?
for
No
sure.
smartphone to yeah, working with robot every day. That's a big jump. But so you mentioned the robot wrangler, right? Typically, you have two, maybe three people that are working on a container, unloading by hand, and maybe they're unloading directly to a pallet or they're unloading to a conveyor, right? And now you bring in stretch, right? So what does I guess what does the job at the dock look like now? You mentioned a robot wrangler. I mean, what's entailed in that, and how many people? What's the ratio of like people to stretch?
Yeah, that's a great question. It The actual question about labor augmentation and kind of stretch replacement really depends on the actual product that stretch is moving
Mm,
and how utilized stretch is. So if you're running stretch almost the entirety of the day and using the fast charger to make sure that you're only having like an hour or two of downtime a day, you're talking running across 3 shifts, and that's a ton of savings there.
mm,
But in terms of actual human interaction with stretch at the dock, it also varies a lot of whether or not you're palletizing at the end of your conveyor or you're going into some sort of sortation system like an auto store. Overall, though, we've seen one person be able to run multiple stretches at the same time because they
mm.
really don't need your full attention. They just need your help getting set up, and then once you push the play button, they typically move on their own unless there is an intervention needed for a drop box or some other reason. Um, so most of the time, the person who's actually at the dock running stretch is maybe the inbound lead.
Okay.
They typically are the ones running it, but we've also seen uh, labor people who are able to run stretch.
Mm,
And it has been one of those things, again, going back to the socialization of the first time people see stretch doing this job, it may be a negative connotation of, hey, this thing's doing what I do. And then once they get trained on how to actually use stretch themselves, they really pick it up and they love it.
mm. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And I think that, it's so interesting to see kind of the evolution of like what a warehouse job is becoming, right? It's more robots come into the space, and people are doing kind of this supervision of the robots instead, and managing exceptions when there are exceptions. So when Stretch is unloading, if Stretch is unloading to a conveyor, right, and then those boxes need to be palletized, what's happening on the other end? Is there another robot that's doing the palletization? Is a human doing that? What does that typically look like?
Sure, we've seen both be other humans or cobots at the other end doing
Mm,
the actual palletization, and it really depends again on the product and how fast stretch is moving and how many people need to
mm,
keep up. We've seen stretch run in the high, close to 1,000 cases per hour if it's really ideal optimized freight. So small, um, multi-pickable boxes where stretch can pick up multiple boxes at a time and place them on the conveyor. Um, in those cases, I've seen 3, 4, 5 people trying to keep up with stretch on the back end.
mm.
It's always not just a stretch continues putting boxes on the conveyor until it overflows off the end. Though stretch is able to make a determination of, hey, the conveyor's full, I should stop until they can catch up to me. So it's not going to continue just placing boxes onto the conveyor forever until stuff starts piling back up.
Yeah.
It's able to make that smart decision of, hey, I should slow down or take a break until people catch back up.
Interesting. So it's able to pace to the human in a sense. So I mean, it sounds like the ideal scenario, like if you were to get Stretch, would be to have like another robot or two doing palletization on the other end to be able to match that pace, right? Because it sounds like Stretch is maybe faster than the human in some cases, right?
Yeah, it's in some cases for sure. I think the best use cases that I've seen are stretch feeding into a long sortation system that
Mm,
then goes into a big storage area.
I
So
see.
it's not being palletized off the back end.
Interesting. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Definitely. And so talk to us a little bit about if people are looking at Stretch and they have high container volume that they need to tackle and get some type of solution for. When they go to deploy this, what I guess either speeds up the process to deployment, or what slows down the process to deployment? How do they make sure their operations are ready for a solution like this?
Our team makes sure we work with every customer who's going to integrate a stretch into their facility, all the way from the sales cycle through customer support. So our team, the field application and the integration project managers, are really, really tied in to the customer super early on to make sure that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, make sure that everything is perfect. Some of the longer lead time things are if a customer is getting a new conveyor for stretch.
Mm,
We've seen that actual conveyor installation can take a while. Um, Networking, working out different networking kinks. So whether we use the customer's network to have stretch transmit its data that way, or if there's a dedicated line, that can also be a long lead time. But actually making sure that stretch works with your facility, it's really all about making sure you have the right freight for stretch.
mm.
There are some use cases where maybe stretch isn't the right fit. Stretch is, you can see our full product spec on our support page, but stretch can lift up to 50 pounds.
Okay.
So we'll often go out ahead of time and do a sort of case analysis with the customer, not business case, like physical cases of
Mm.
what boxes are you moving in your facility, and see if stretch is a good fit here. But most of the time, even if a majority of the freight is, I'll say, stretchable for lack of a better word here,
I like that.
so even if a majority of the freight is stretchable, you'll still find enough freight to feed stretch that actually makes it worthwhile within the facility. We've also been doing a like item master analysis on a lot of people's item
Mm.
masters, so they can
Yeah.
send over historic data, and we can make a report of, hey, stretch can confidently run X percentage of your freight, and it can tackle X percentage of containers. Maybe you have mixed SKU containers, and half of it is stretchable and half of it isn't. Um, so we're able to do all of that work also with just with data. And then a lot of warehouses we're seeing are so much more data driven,
Yeah.
and having this historic data is really important for making sure stretch is a good fit.
Interesting. So now, if I have a facility, right, am I going to have, I guess, doors that are dedicated to stretch, and then doors that are for, I guess, loads that stretch can't handle or that are outside of the specs? What does that mix look like?
Yeah, we. It also depends on the size of the facility. Some facilities have dozens of inbound lanes, and
Yeah.
some have maybe two or three dedicated ones. The stretch safety system really is designed so that if stretch is not unloading for any reason, you can still use that door for manual unload.
Okay.
So the safety system sits outside of the dock.
Hmm.
So if you decide you need to manually unload a container for any reason, that dock door is not lost. It's not no longer just a stretch door. On the flip side of that, dock doors do need to be configured for stretch to work on them. So stretch can't drive halfway across the warehouse and start working on a random door.
Mm.
It needs to have the safety system integrated into the conveyor there.
Gotcha. I see. So the door can be a door for stretch needs to be like set up for stretch, which makes sense. And then, but it can also be used like in a regular fashion too, right? So if you had a palletized load come in, somebody could go in there with a forklift and unload. So interesting. Okay. Interesting stuff here. And so, if we look at, because obviously, Boston Dynamics is very cutting edge on the robotics side, and you mentioned a little bit about like Atlas as the future as well, and some of the interesting things happening there. So if you look at the warehouse in general, I mean, what do you think, or what does Boston Dynamics think about what does the future warehouse kind of look like?
I've seen so many renderings of our idea of the warehouse of the future at this point,
Yeah.
and they all look amazing. Just stretch unloading and AGVs moving cases and pallets around, and Spot doing industrial inspection, Atlas doing part sequencing. There are so many use cases for the future of these truly heavily autonomized, either with heavy industrial equipment or smaller robotics. Just being able to absolutely revolutionize these warehouses. And you hear this idea of lights out warehouses kind of often.
Yeah.
And we're working with some customers who have this vision of their warehouses being lights off by, let's say, 2030.
Mm.
And maybe 5 years ago, if you had told me that idea, I would have said we were so far out.
Yeah.
And I really see it now. There are a lot of facilities, even today, that I've worked in, that were integrated stretch in, where stretch unloads a box and it's not touched again until it's getting pulled for order building.
Hmm.
And then it doesn't get touched again until it gets loaded into the container on the outbound side. So there are facilities right now where SKUs aren't touched more than 2 or 3 times in their entire life cycle within the warehouse because of how much industrial automation is there.
Hmm.
There are so many amazing companies who are working in the industrial automation space, and if you go to these shows like ProMat and Logimat and Modex, you see it. You see all these crazy solutions, and when they all work together, it makes something truly amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting to hear that and kind of hear like your perspective on it. And I think it's interesting too that you touched on that. A couple years ago, someone said lights out to you. You're like, oh, that's way, way far away. And now you're kind of like, okay, I can see it happening. And I think we're seeing kind of these different pieces develop, whether it's, the pieces that Boston Dynamics is developing or other companies, as you mentioned at a ProMat, et cetera, kind of coming together. And now it's about like, how do we get them to work together, right? It's always been a challenge. How do we get humans to work together, right? Now it's like, how do we get
Yeah.
the robots to work together and, be friendly. So I think it'd be interesting to see that. And I think I'm also interested to see like, how does Boston Dynamics continue to evolve the solutions? And, cause I could see where, Stretch is working with Atlas in some capacity in the warehouse or, Spot or something like that. So really interested to continue to see some of these evolutions and also some of the additional use cases that you kind of teased a little bit for Stretch in the future here. So really appreciate you coming on and giving us some of the latest with Boston Dynamics in the warehousing world here, Madi. So if people are interested in learning more and getting more details about Boston Dynamics, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, or if you go to bostondynamics.com, there's a ton of good information on there. You can really dig into a lot of our use cases for Spot and Stretch. There's a lot of customer stories, success stories that they talk about, where you can really learn more about customers that may look like your industry and see how Spot and Stretch are actually working in those industries. Um, for Atlas, I would just keep an eye out on our YouTube page. We're releasing a ton of really cool content all the time of these huge, huge, huge jumps of autonomy that Atlas is currently going through. I mean, even internally, we see it. It might be a week, and Atlas now can do a handstand.
Mm.
You'll see this stuff all the time coming out for about Atlas. If you have any questions, feel free to. There's a contact form on our website. Feel free to reach out, and someone will read your request and get back to you.
All right, great. And we definitely will look out for more of those fun videos that you all put out there. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes here so people can easily find it. So, Madi, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kevin.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesAreSexy.com and get your own.